Go somewhere secluded, my boss's wife said, and I froze. The first time Isabella Lauren said those words in my car, my world turned upside down. I was driving her home on orders from her husband, my boss. Alexander Lauren doesn't ask twice. He doesn't negotiate or explain. He simply states what needs to happen, and the universe obeys. That Thursday night, the Los Angeles heat still clung to everything like a second skin, though darkness had fallen hours earlier. The air conditioner in my old Honda Accord wheezed pitifully, losing a losing battle with the September heat. Isabella sat motionless in the passenger seat, unnaturally still, except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest as she breathed. Her hands were folded in her lap, her fingers clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Then she turned to me, her voice barely audible, fragile as glass. "Marcus, go somewhere secluded." My fingers on the steering wheel turned white with tension. The words hung in the air between us, filled with innuendos I didn't want to analyze. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching us from. We're curious to see where our story has reached. I'm Marcus Chen, 32, living in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Pasadena that's functional but never feels like home. I work at the most prestigious luxury car dealership in Southern California, a place where we sell vehicles that cost more than most people's homes. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, custom Porsches, cars that are more investments than transportation. The job pays well enough that I can forget how lonely my life has become, how small my world has become since Sarah left. Sarah was an architect with big dreams and even bigger impatience with anyone who didn't aspire to the same heights. We dated for 3 years. She wanted to move to New York, work for a well-known firm, live in a penthouse, and host gallery events. I wanted stability, routine, a life that didn't require constant ambition as fuel. She called me content with mediocrity. I called it exhausting. She left 2 years ago, and since then, I've just been going through the motions. Work, home, sleep, repeat. No risks, no complications, no pain. Alexander Lauren owns an empire of car dealerships, 7 locations across California. Each one is a cathedral of automotive perfection. He's 54, silver-haired, always impeccably dressed in suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He carries himself with the quiet authority that comes from a man who's never been told no. When he speaks, people lean in close and take notes. When he looks at you, you feel like he's reading a balance sheet of your worth, calculating whether you're an asset or a liability. His wife, Isabella, was always an enigma wrapped in designer clothes. I saw her at corporate balls, charity auctions, holiday parties, always at Alexander's side, but somehow never with him. She's 39, with the effortless elegance that only money and good genes can create. Dark hair, usually styled in exquisite updos, subtle jewelry that whispered wealth rather than shouted it. Her posture was so impeccable it seemed painful, but her eyes, I noticed them even in those brief encounters. Her eyes always seemed to be searching for something, an exit perhaps, or a window in a doorless room. We never really talked beyond polite pleasantries. "Good evening, Marcus. The weather is beautiful today. Thank you for your work on the Peterson account." That's the line. Boss's wife, employee, keep it clean, professional, and at a distance. Then came that Thursday evening. The dealership was busy. September was always a strong month for sales, with people closing deals before the end of the year. I was finishing up the paperwork for a Range Rover when my phone rang. Lauren. My stomach instinctively clenched, as it always did when I saw his name on the screen. "Marcus," he said, his voice carrying that trademark calm that somehow made everything feel like a command. "I need you to do something for me. Pick up Isabella from the Castellan Gallery on Melrose. I'm delayed with investors from Singapore. I won't be free for another 3 hours." My first instinct was to offer to send him a car and driver. "But you offer no alternative to Alexander Lauren." "Of course, Mr. Lauren. I'll be heading there now." "Good guy," he replied, then ended the call without another word. No please, no thank you. Just an assumption of consent. I locked my office, grabbed my keys, and stepped out into the Los Angeles evening. Traffic was a nightmare. Brake lights stretched to the horizon. The city moved like blood through clogged arteries. The Castellan Gallery was in West Hollywood, one of those minimalist white cubic spaces where a single painting costs more than a house in most parts of America. I found Isabella standing alone in the main gallery space, in front of a massive canvas depicting a turbulent ocean. The painting was all dark blues and grays, the furious brushstrokes suggesting barely contained chaos. She was dressed in simple black trousers and a cream silk blouse. No ball gown, no theatrical costume. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders. She looked smaller than I remembered, more human, almost fragile. "Mrs. Lauren," I said softly, not wanting to scare her. She turned around, and something flickered across her face. Not surprise. She was clearly expecting someone. Relief, perhaps, or resignation. Her eyes were reddish, as if she had been crying or fighting the urge to cry. "Marcus," she said, and there was a heaviness in the way she said my name, as if it had cost her something. "Alexander sent you." "Yes, ma'am. He asked me to take you home." She looked at me for a long moment, then returned her gaze to the painting. "Of course he did. He sends someone for everything." The bitterness in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. We walked to my car in silence. The evening air was thick and warm, carrying the scent of jasmine from somewhere nearby. I opened the passenger door, a habit I'd developed after years of customer service, and she slid in without comment. I walked around to the driver's side of the car, my mind already plotting the route to Bel Air, calculating the road conditions. Anything to take my mind off the tension emanating from the woman beside me. The engine started with a reliable rumble. I merged into the traffic. The silence in the car was different from the silence in the gallery. This one was charged, uncomfortable, as if something unspoken was taking up all the oxygen. "It's about 25 minutes to your house from here," I said, trying to sound casual and professional. "Traffic shouldn't be too bad at this time." Isabella didn't answer right away. Her hands were twisting in her lap, her fingers working against each other, as if trying to solve a problem. I saw her reflection in the passenger window, eyes closed, jaw tense, breathing carefully controlled. Then she spoke, her voice breaking on the words. "Marcus, please don't take me there." I was confused. "Excuse me?" "Somewhere with life," she said louder, more desperately. "Music, strangers, conversations, anywhere but that house. Please." The way she said that house, not home, not our house, just that house, tugged at something deep in my chest. This wasn't a whim or a detour. This was a woman who couldn't bring herself to walk through her own front door. I should have said no. I should have cited Mr. Lauren's instructions, my professional boundaries, all the very good reasons why this was a terrible idea. Instead, I heard myself say, "Okay, I know a place." I changed lanes, heading from Bel Air to Silver Lake, and watched Isabella's shoulders sag slightly as the distance from her mansion grew. She didn't ask where we were going. She simply stared out the window as the city transformed around us. From the manicured wealth of the West Side to the rougher, more authentic streets east of Hollywood. Vintage shops, taco joints, murals sprawling across brick walls. Real life, happening in real time. The place I chose wasn't fancy. Blue Note was a small jazz club, squeezed between a record store and a vintage clothing boutique. The kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. A faded blue awning hung over the entrance, and warm light poured in from windows covered with posters of local musicians. I discovered the place 6 months after Sarah left, on one of those nights when my apartment felt too empty and sitting alone felt like suffocation. I found parking half a block away. Isabella didn't say a word during the drive, but when I turned off the engine, she finally looked at me. "What is this place?" "Somewhere with life," I said, echoing her words. "Music and strangers. No one knows you here. No one is watching." Something changed in her expression. Gratitude mixed with relief, and something else I couldn't quite place. We walked toward the entrance together, careful not to get too close, maintaining that invisible buffer of decency even when we crossed the line of indecency. The Blue Note smelled of old wood and bourbon, worn leather, and decades of cigarette smoke that no California smoking ban could completely erase. The lighting was low and warm, Edison bulbs strung across the exposed brick walls. A small stage occupied the far corner, where a trio sat. Double bass, piano, saxophone. They played something slow and melancholy, the kind of jazz that sounds like loneliness given a melody. We found a corner booth, half hidden behind a support column. The worn leather seats had seen better days, but they were comfortable in the way that old things are, shaped by use, embracing imperfection. Isabella slid in first, and I sat across from her, close enough to talk, far enough away to maintain the fiction that it was somehow still professional. A waitress appeared, about 55 years old, with silver streaks in her black hair and kind eyes that had seen everything twice. "What can I get you guys?" Isabella didn't hesitate. "Whiskey, no ice, double." The waitress's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't comment. She looked at me. "Just water," I said. "Plain, not carbonated." "Playing it safe, dear?" the waitress asked with a small smile. "Something like that," I replied. Someone at this table had to keep the peace, and Isabella clearly wasn't volunteering. When the waitress left, Isabella let out a long sigh, as if she'd been holding it since we left the gallery. She looked around the club, the mismatched furniture, the faded posters, the people scattered in small groups, talking and laughing. No one was wearing designer labels. No one was displaying wealth. These were just people being people. "This is perfect," she said quietly. "Thank you." "Please, Mrs. Lauren." "Isabella," she corrected in a firm voice. "Please, just Isabella." The drinks arrived. Isabella gripped the glass of whiskey with both hands, as if it were the only solid thing in her universe. She stared into the amber liquid for a long moment, then took a sip. Not a delicate sip, but a real one, the kind meant to burn and numb. "I used to paint," she said suddenly, her eyes still on the glass. "Watercolors, mostly. Landscapes, abstracts, sometimes portraits. I had a studio in my apartment in San Francisco before I met Alexander. Nothing fancy, just a converted sunny room with good light and rags everywhere. I'd paint for hours and lose track of time." I leaned back slightly, giving her space to speak. What happened to her? Her smile was bitter, sharp. I married a billionaire. That's what happened. She took another sip. Alexander said the art supplies were cluttering the house. He said the smell of paint thinner was giving him headaches. He suggested I find other hobbies, something more suited to someone in my position. Charity committees, gallery boards where I looked at other people's art instead of creating my own. Dinners with other wives who had also given up their passions to become accessories. The words came faster now, as if a dam had cracked. So I stopped. I stopped painting. I stopped having opinions on everything that mattered. I learned to smile at the right times, wear the right designers, say the right things at dinner parties. I became exactly what he needed. Beautiful, refined, invisible. You're not invisible, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp and searching. Really? When was the last time Alexander asked me what I thought about something important? When was the last time he asked me what I wanted, what I dreamed of, what I was afraid of? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He asks what I wear to events. He asks if I've confirmed with the catering company. He asks if I've been taking my vitamins. He manages me like I'm just another asset in his portfolio. The saxophone on stage went solo, the notes rising and falling like unanswered questions. I didn't know what to say. Isabella Lauren. Isabella. Just Isabella. Was dismantling herself before me, unpacking years of silent suffering, and I was just a car salesman who had made the mistake of caring. Why are you telling me this? I asked cautiously. Why today? Why me? Isabella put down her glass and leaned forward slightly. The dim lighting illuminated her face, highlighting the tiredness around her eyes and the tension in her jaw. Because you listen without wanting anything from me, she said. Because when you look at me, you see a person, not a possession or a status symbol. Because I've been drowning for so long that I've forgotten what it feels like to breathe. And today, I needed to remember. My throat tightened. I recognized that feeling of drowning. I'd felt it after Sarah left, that suffocating sensation that your life was happening to you, not being lived. I understand, I said quietly. More than you might think. Isabella's expression softened. Tell me. And I told her. I told her about Sarah, about the 3 years we spent together, pulled in opposite directions, about how she wanted heights and I wanted the ground, how she needed constant movement and I craved stability. About the night she packed her bags and told me I was content with mediocrity. Like that was the worst thing a person could be. About the 2 years since, going through the motions, selling cars, coming home, falling asleep, repeating safely, shallowly, and slowly, disappearing into routine. You are alone, Isabella said. It wasn't a question. I'm careful, I corrected. Loneliness is what happens when you're careful for too long. She reached across the table then, not touching me, but close. Her hand lay palm up on the scarred wood between us. An offer. I need to tell you something else, she said, lowering her voice. But not here. Not with these people around, even if they don't know who I am. I need somewhere quieter. My pulse quickened. Warning bells rang in my head, loud and insistent. Isabel. Your car, she said. Just park somewhere. 5 minutes. That's all I need. I should have refused. I should have paid the bill, driven her straight to Bel Air and told Alexander his wife was safe. I should have protected my work, my routine, my carefully constructed walls. Instead, I called the waitress over, paid cash, and led Isabella back out into the warm Los Angeles night. We climbed into my Honda. I drove without thinking, muscle memory taking over while my mind calculated the consequences and complications. I found myself in Griffith Park, climbing a winding road to one of the observation decks. Below, Los Angeles spread out in every direction, a vast ocean of lights. Millions of people living millions of lives. We were all searching for something we couldn't name. I parked and turned off the engine. The sudden silence seemed enormous, pressing against the windows, as if trying to get in. Isabella looked out at the city, her face half illuminated by the distant lights. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm, as if she had been rehearsing these words for years. "He's not cruel," she said. "That's what makes it so difficult to explain. Alexander doesn't yell. He doesn't throw things or make threats. He just decides everything. What I wear to events, his assistant sends me suggestions. Who I see, he suggests it would be better if I didn't spend so much time with certain friends he considers a bad influence. How I spend my days. He built me a home gym so I don't have to leave the house. He's building an empire, and I'm just part of the architecture. Beautiful, functional, and his." My hands tightened on the steering wheel even though we weren't moving. "Isabella, why are you telling me this? What do you want me to do?" She turned to look at me at last, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't want you to do anything. I just needed someone to hear me, to see me, to confirm that I'm not crazy for feeling like I'm disappearing." "You're not crazy," I said, the words coming out harsher than I intended. "You're trapped." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, that's exactly it." Then her phone lit up in her lap, vibrating insistently. Alexander. Even from where I sat, I could see his name on the screen. Isabella stared at it as if it were a subpoena from a judge, then hit the mute button. "He's checking his inventory," she said, her voice flat and bitter, "making sure his investment is secure." The phone buzzed again, a message this time, then another. Isabella didn't look at them. "What would happen if I took you home right now?" I asked. "Right this second. What would happen when you walked through that door?" Isabella closed her eyes. "He'll be in his office, tablet in hand, scrolling through acquisition reports or market data. He'll look up when I walk in. He'll say, 'There you are. How was your evening?' Not because he's interested in my answer, but because it's the script. I'll say, 'Good evening. Yes, I'm fine.' He'll nod and turn back to the screen. I'll go upstairs to my bedroom, my private bedroom in the East Wing, and lie awake, wondering when I stopped being a person and became a thing." The casual mention of separate bedrooms shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. On the outside, the Laurens looked like a power couple, polished, successful, perfectly suited to each other. On the inside, they were strangers sharing an address. "How long?" I asked. "How long has it been like this?" "Always," Isabella said. "From the very beginning. I just didn't see it at first. Or maybe I didn't want to see it." Isabella's phone buzzed again, insistent as a heartbeat. She finally glanced at the screen, reading the messages without opening them. Her jaw tensed with each new notification. "He wants to know where I am," she said flatly. "He's asking if I'm safe. Not because he's worried about me, but because he's worried about his appearance. What if someone saw me alone? What if there were photos? What if a crack appeared in his carefully crafted image?" I watched her face in the dim light, seeing something shift from resignation to something firmer. Anger, perhaps, or the beginning of clarity. "I need to tell you something," she said, turning fully towards me. "Something I've never said out loud to anyone." I waited, giving her space to find the words. "3 months ago, I went to see a divorce lawyer," Isabella said, her voice firm despite the weight of her confession. "Catherine Reeves, one of the best in Los Angeles. I sat in her office overlooking Century City and told her everything. The control, the isolation, how I disappeared into his life." She listened, took notes, asked questions. "What did she say?" I asked. Isabella's laugh was hollow. She said I had grounds. She said California is a community property state, that I could walk away with significant assets. Then she asked if I was prepared for what Alexander would do. She paused, her fingers curling together. "She's taken on powerful men before." She said, "They don't play fair. They use private investigators, leverage, PR firms. They make you look unstable, unfaithful, mentally ill. They bury you in motions and delays until you're too exhausted to fight." "Did you hire her?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "I left that office, went home, and pretended the meeting had never happened. Because I was scared. Because leaving seemed impossible. Because I'd already lost so much of myself that I didn't know if there was enough left to recover." The saxophone from the distant club seemed to echo back to where we sat, mournful and insistent. I understood fear. I'd lived with it for 2 years. The fear of wanting something badly enough to risk losing it. "But tonight," Isabella continued, "sitting in that gallery, looking at that painting of the storm, something broke. Or maybe something finally healed enough to break. I realized I can't do this anymore. I can't be Mrs. Alexander Lauren, the perfect accessory. I'd rather be nothing than his nothing." She looked at me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "That's why I asked you to go somewhere private. Not because I wanted to seduce you or drag you into some kind of scandal, but because I needed to say these things out loud to someone who would listen without judgment. Someone who wouldn't immediately start calculating costs, image, or strategy." "I hear you," I said quietly. "And if that means anything, you're not nobody. You never were." Isabella's eyes gleamed. "You barely know me." "I know you well enough," I replied. "I know you've given up on something you loved because someone told you it didn't fit their vision. I know you're sitting here in a stranger's car, confessing your life, instead of going home to a mansion because that mansion feels like a mausoleum. I know you're stronger than you think." She quickly wiped her eyes, not wanting to let the tears fall. "What should I do, Marcus? Tomorrow morning, what should I do?" I thought about this carefully, knowing that my answer mattered. "You go home tonight. You walk through that door. But tomorrow, you call Catherine Reeves again. You hire her, and you begin the process of taking your life back." "He will destroy me," she said, fear returning to her voice. "Maybe he'll try," I said. "But he can't destroy what he doesn't own. And he doesn't own you, Isabella. He never has." Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up and typed a reply. I couldn't see what she wrote, but her expression was determined. When she finished, she put the phone down with finality. I told him I needed some air after the gallery, that I'd be home soon. She looked at me. "Take me back now, please, before I lose my resolve." I started the engine and drove down from the observation deck, back along the winding roads to Bel Air. The city lights blurred past us. Isabella was silent, but it was a different silence now. Not defeated, but gathering strength. As we reached her street, the houses grew larger and more imposing, set back behind gates and security systems, each one a fortress, each one a prison, depending on your perspective. I pulled up to the gates of the Lawrence mansion. The house beyond was lit like a museum after hours. Beautiful, cold, empty of real life. Through the tall windows, I could see chandeliers, art on the walls, expensive furniture arranged with designer precision. Isabella didn't move to leave right away. She sat, looking at the house, as if memorizing it, saying goodbye to it, or both. "Thank you," she finally said, "for listening, for not making this weird or difficult, for simply being decent when I needed it." "Please," I said, "and Isabella, whatever you decide to do, you'll be fine." She smiled, fragile but sincere. "I want to believe it." "Have faith," I said, "and if you need someone to remind you of that, you have my number. Mr. Lauren gave it to you months ago for emergencies." "It seems like an emergency," she said softly. Then she opened the door and stepped out into the warm night. She walked toward the gate, her posture straightening with each step, as if she were putting on her armor. I waited until she passed through the gate and the front door closed behind her before driving away. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My chest was tight with emotions I couldn't name. Worry, fear, something dangerously close to affection for a woman I barely knew, but somehow understood completely. That night I lay awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, knowing I had crossed a line I could not cross back, knowing that tomorrow would bring consequences I could not predict. At 7:23 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "This is Isabella. I called Catherine. I'm meeting her tomorrow. Thank you for reminding me that I'm still human." I looked at the message, my heart pounding. I typed, "Proud of you. You can do it." Her answer came quickly. "I'm scared." "It means you're doing something real," I wrote. "Fear is better than numbness. Can we talk again soon?" I should have said no. I should have drawn a line, protected myself, kept my distance from the forest fire I saw approaching. Instead, I typed, "Coffee, public place, tomorrow after your meeting." "Thank you," she wrote, "for everything." I didn't answer. I just sat there, holding the phone, realizing that my quiet, cautious life was about to get very complicated. The coffee shop Isabella chose was in Santa Monica, far from Beverly Hills and the circles where she might be recognized. It was called The Daily Grind, a deliberately unpretentious name for a place with mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, and baristas with creative piercings. I arrived 10 minutes early and grabbed a corner table near the back, away from the windows and pedestrian traffic. Isabella walked in at exactly 1400, and she looked different. She was wearing jeans, real jeans, faded and comfortable, and a simple dark blue sweater. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail. No jewelry except for small gold earrings. She looked younger, less polished, more real. When she noticed me, relief flooded her face. She ordered a latte and joined me at the table, lowering her bag with a heaviness that suggested she was carrying more than just personal belongings. "I did it," she said without preamble. "I hired Catherine. I signed the retainer agreement this morning. It's official. I'm filing for divorce." The words hung in the air between us, massive and irreversible. "How are you feeling?" I asked. Isabella wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, a gesture I was beginning to recognize as her way of grounding herself. Scared, relieved, nauseated, Free. All at once. Has he been notified yet? Tomorrow, she said. Catherine wanted to act quickly, before he could start moving assets or constructing a counter-narrative. She's good at that. She's prosecuted men like Alexander before. She knows the playbook. I leaned forward slightly. Where are you staying? Please tell me you're not still in that house. At my sister's, Isabella said. Sophia lives in Pasadena and has a guest room. She's been asking me to leave Alexander for 3 years. She was actually angry it took me so long. Something in my chest loosened slightly. At least she wasn't alone. At least she had someone. What happens next? I asked. Isabella took a sip of her latte, gathering her thoughts. Catherine says he'll try to paint me as unstable or self-serving. He'll have private investigators scouring my life, my activities, my relationships, looking for anything he can exploit. The hint got through to me immediately. Your relationship? You mean me? She met my gaze, guilt flickering across her face. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't think about what it would mean to you if Alexander found out I was with you that night. He already knows, I said quietly. Isabella froze. What? He called me into his office yesterday morning, I said, feeling the memory like a weight on my chest. He knows about Blue Note, about the trip to Griffith Park, about the coffee shop meetings. I watched as her face paled. He has people watching you, Isabella. Or maybe he has tracking on your phone. I don't know, but he knows. Oh my God, she whispered. Marcus, your work. He gave me a warning, I said. He said I was a good salesman. He suggested I shouldn't throw away my career over something I couldn't win at. His exact words. Isabella looked shocked. You need to distance yourself from me. Now, tell him it was nothing, that you were simply following his instructions to help me. Tell him, no, I interrupted, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Marcus, you don't understand what he's capable of. I understand exactly what he's capable of, I said. But I'm done living in fear, Isabella. I spent 2 years playing it safe, keeping my head down, avoiding anything that could hurt me. And you know what? I was still dying. Just slowly, quietly. Death by routine. Isabella looked at me, her coffee forgotten. What are you saying? I'm telling you I've quit, I told her. I handed in my resignation this morning, gave 2 weeks' notice. Alexander accepted it without comment, as if he'd expected it, as if I were just another figure leaving his board. You quit your job? Isabella's voice rose slightly. Marcus, this is crazy. You have bills, rent, a life. I have a life that's been suffocating me, I corrected. Working for a man who treats people like property, selling cars to people with more money than purpose, coming home every night to an empty apartment and pretending to be happy. That's not living. It's just passing time. I reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close. I'm not quitting because of you. I'm quitting because of me. Because you reminded me what it's like to actually care about something, to want something more than just security. Tears rolled down Isabella's cheeks. You barely know me. I know enough, I said. I know you're brave enough to walk away from billions of dollars because you'd rather be poor and yourself than rich and invisible. I know you're fighting for something real. And I know it matters more than selling luxury cars to people who already have everything. She wiped her eyes, laughing through her tears. This is crazy. We're both crazy. Probably, I agreed. But madness feels better than numbness. We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop hummed with life around us. Students studying, writers typing, couples chatting about normal things like weekend plans and shopping lists. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. And for the first time in years, I wanted this more than I wanted safety. I was offered a position at a smaller dealership in Glendale, I said. Nothing fancy. They sell used cars, mostly practical vehicles for people who actually need transportation. The pay is lower, but it's honest work. And the owner is a guy named Tom, who coaches a youth baseball team on weekends and doesn't treat his employees like chess pieces. Isabella smiled through her tears. That sounds perfect for you. What about you? I asked. What happens after the divorce? She took a shaky breath. Catherine thinks it will take 6 months, maybe longer if Alexander struggles too much. During that time, I need to stay visible, stay clean, show that I'm stable and independent. I'm going to teach again. I've contacted the Pasadena Community Arts Center. They're looking for painting teachers. It's not prestigious, but it's my thing. This is incredible, I said sincerely. And, she continued, her voice growing stronger, I'm going to paint again. Really paint. I'm setting up a studio in Sophia's garage. Nothing fancy, just space, light, and the freedom to create something with my own hands. We talked for another hour about things big and small, about her fears and my plans, about what comes after you blow up your life and have to build a new one from the rubble. The conversation was easy in a way that important conversations rarely are, as if we were both finally speaking a language we understood. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow through the coffee shop windows, Isabella checked her phone and winced. I have to go. Catherine wants to review some paperwork before submitting it tomorrow. We stood up and gathered our things. At the door, Isabella hesitated, then came closer and gave me a brief hug. It was quick, appropriate, but real. Thank you, she said into my shoulder, for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you, I replied, for waking me up. She stepped back, smiled once, and walked out into the golden Los Angeles evening. I stood there for a moment, watching her go, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Hope, perhaps, or possibility, or just a simple acknowledgement that life was happening again. Real, complex, and worth fighting for. 6 months passed. Isabella's divorce had unfolded with the expected squalor. Private investigators leaked stories. Alexander's legal team painted her as unstable and self-serving. But Catherine was better, and the evidence was clear. Years of control, documented in letters. Testimony from friends who watched Isabella disappear. Even the discarded paintings she kept in storage, dated and heartbreaking in their abandoned potential. The settlement was substantial, but not devastating to Alexander's empire. Isabella took enough to be comfortable, not rich, and left the Bel Air mansion without looking back. I saw her from time to time during those months, always in public places, always briefly, always cautiously. We were friends, navigating a difficult situation, both rebuilding our lives from ruin. Then, one Saturday in March, as I was leaving my new job at a Glendale dealership, I saw her standing next to her car in the parking lot. It wasn't a luxury car. It was a practical Honda Civic, silver, 3 years old, with good mileage. Isabella, I said, surprised and genuinely glad to see her. What are you doing here? She smiled, and it was the first truly open smile I'd ever seen on her face. I need a car, something reliable and unpretentious, and I heard you work here now. Yes, I said, understanding blossoming. Let me show you what we have. We walked around the parking lot together, discussing engine reliability, fuel economy, and the normal things that normal people discuss when buying normal cars. It seemed ordinary and perfect. "How's teaching?" I asked. "It's amazing," she said, her eyes lighting up. "I have 12 students now, ranging in age from 8 to 74, and I'm painting again, really painting. One of my pieces was accepted into a group show at a gallery in Pasadena. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine." "This is incredible," I said, meaning it with my whole being. She looked at me then. She really looked at me. The way she had looked at me that first night in my car. "Are you happy, Marcus?" I thought about it honestly. My apartment was still small. My salary was smaller. My life was simpler and quieter than before. But I woke up every morning without fear. I went to work and helped people find vehicles they could actually afford. I came home, cooked dinner, read books, and felt like myself. "Yes," I said. "I'm really happy." "Okay," Isabella said softly. "You deserve it." We finished the test drive. She bought the Civic, paid in full, and we completed the paperwork with professional efficiency. As I handed her the keys, our fingers brushed briefly. "Marcus," she said, hesitating at the door, "would you like to have coffee sometime? Not as your boss's ex-wife, not as someone you saved, just as Isabella, who would like to have coffee with Marcus." I smiled. "I'd love that. How about next Saturday, that coffee shop in Santa Monica?" "Excellent," she said, her smile matching mine. She drove away in her sensible silver Civic, and I watched her go, feeling something settle in my chest. Not an ending, not quite a beginning. Just two people who had weathered their own storms, finding each other on solid ground. The sun was setting over Glendale, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I locked the dealership, climbed into my old Honda Accord, and drove home through the evening traffic, thinking about coffee shops, second chances, and the strange paths that lead us to the lives we're meant to live. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is go somewhere private with someone who needs to be seen. Sometimes, saving someone looks like giving up their safety. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the woman who asked you to go somewhere private becomes the person who teaches you what it means to finally come home. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Another incredible story awaits you in the next video.